to the right and you'll see that the answer's 43. I can't move decimals when we multiply. You move it to the right. Writing is different. The decimal will move to the left. Left is how the decimal slice. When you multiply, the decimal moves to the right. If you're asked to divide, left is how the decimal slice. When you multiply, the decimal moves to the right. I now know how to move a decimal to the right when we multiply. Work a miracle. Oh, it's easy if you try. Just remember the next line. I can move decimals when we multiply. Move it to the right. Writing is different. The decimal will move to the left.
Alright class, Miss Shuffler here again. We are doing our last lesson in chapter 4. So we're going to be looking at lesson 4.8, which is zeros in the product, page 191 in your big math book. So let's take a look at our essential question. How do you know you have the correct number of decimal places in your product? Well, that's a good question, especially when decimals are multiplied. The product may not always have enough digits to place the decimal point. In these cases, you may need to write additional zeros. So let's begin by answering our essential question of the day by looking at our word problem. Students are racing typical garden snails and measuring the distance the snails travel in 1 minute. Chris's snail travels a distance of 2/10 of a foot. Jamie's snail travels 4/10 times as far as Chris's snail. How far does Jamie's snail travel? Well, to begin with, let's figure out what's important within this so that we can pull it out. So we know that they're measuring the distance the snails travel in 1 minute. So Chris's snail travels a distance of 2/10 of a foot. That's Chris's snail. And we know Jamie's snail travels 4/10 times as far as Chris's snail. Now our question is, how far does Jamie's snail travel? Well, we know that we must begin by multiplying. So we'll multiply 4/10 times 2/10. The very first step we have to do is to use the given information, describe what we are being asked to find. Well, we know that we have 2/10 of a foot for Chris's snail and that Jamie's snail travels 4/10 times as far. Well, we know we need to find the 4/10 of 2/10 foot to determine the distance of Jamie's snail travels. So the first step that we're going to do is to multiply as with whole numbers. So we need to take 4/10 and 2/10 and turn them into whole numbers. So we will need to move our decimal point one place to the right in both factors. And therefore we will have 2 times 4. Step 2 is to determine the position of the decimal point in the product. Since we learned in last chapter, when tenths are being multiplied by tenths, the product will show hundreds. So, since we are multiplying tenth by tenth, we will know that our answer will need to be in the hundredths place. So let's convert our numbers, our whole numbers, back into their decimal counterparts. So we are going to do 2/10 or 2 wholes and make it into 2/10 by multiplying 1/10. We are going to take our 4 and multiply it by 1/10 to get our 4/10 back. Now, since again we are multiplying tenths by tenths, our answer will need to be in the hundredths place. So we'll multiply our eighth times 1/100th, and that will give us an answer of 8/100ths. Which means we will need to move our decimal place 2 places to the left. But wait a second, let's look at step 3. Step 3 says to place the decimal point. Now, are there enough digits in the product to place the decimal point? Well, we've only got 1 place. So the answer to that would be no. So in order to answer it appropriately, we will need to write zeros as needed to the left of the whole number product to place the decimal point. So when we look back over here, we will actually need to add a 0 to the left of the whole number in order to place our decimal point. And that will look like 0.08 or 8/100ths. So Jamie's snail travels a distance of 8/100ths foot. So let's take a look at another example. This time we're going to be multiplying with money. Now let's keep in mind when we multiply with money that since the cents are only demonstrated by 2 place values to the right of the decimal point. For example, if we have a dime worth 10 cents, that's 1/10 or 0.10 of a dollar. So let's start with step 1. We're going to multiply as with whole numbers. So let's think to ourselves. The factors are 30/100ths and 2/10ths. So what are the whole numbers that we're going to multiply? Well, we need to take our 30 cents and convert that to a whole number, and our 2/10ths and convert that to a whole number. In order to do that, we need to move our decimal to the right until we have a whole number. So the whole numbers that we will multiply will be 30 times 2. Well, using our mental math that we earned earlier this year, we can multiply these two factors in our head because we know that 3 times 2 equals 6, and we need to add 1 0. So we can place our 60 underneath our multiplication problem to our right. Now, let's take a look at step 2. It says to determine the position of the decimal point in the product. Since hundreds are being multiplied by tens, since hundreds are being multiplied by tenths, the product will show thousandths. So our next step is to place the decimal point. If need be, we can write zeros to the left of the whole number product as needed. So let's count over. Since we know our answer has to be in the thousands and we only have 2 digits right now, it does look like we will need to add a 0 to the left of our whole number and place our decimal. Since the problem involves dollars and cents, what place value should you use to show cents? And we mentioned that at the very beginning. We only have, when we're dealing with change or money, we only have 2 place values to the right of the decimal. So we will actually drop off our end 0. And therefore, our answer is going to show to the hundredths. So 2/10 times 30/100ths is 6/600 or 6 cents. All right, so let's try one more, finding the product. We have 2/10 times 5/100. Well, this one we should be able to use some mental math. We know the first thing that we need to do is to convert both numbers to whole numbers. So we will move our decimal point one place to the right for our 2 and 2 places to the right for our 5. So we know that 2 times 5 equals 10. Now, we also know that we are multiplying tenths by hundredths. So when you multiply tenths by hundredths, your answer is going to have to be to the thousandths, which is actually 3 places to the right of the decimal. So we will need to take our whole number and move it over 3 places, but we only have 2. So therefore, we need to add a 0 to the left of our whole number and place our decimal point. So once we've done so, we know that 2/10 times 5/100 equals 10 thousandths. Or we can take away the 0 on the end and know that 2/10 times 500 equals 1/100. So, what steps did we take to find the product? Well, we know first we determined how many decimal places will be in the product. Then we multiplied as with whole numbers. Last, we placed the decimal point in the correct position. To do so, we had to write a 0 to the left of the whole number product to place the decimal point. Okay, time to record your password for lesson 4.8. Today's password comes from chapter 2 and is a term that you learned that deals the number that is to be divided in a division problem is and it's looking for this number right here. What is this called right here? And if you answered with dividend, you are correct. Go ahead and record this in your planner and be sure to bring it with you to class tomorrow.